Alright everybody, welcome to our next lesson here. Today we're going to be talking about identity development in teenagers. Okay, so take a look at our objectives and standards to explain the different views of identity development and to analyze how teenagers develop their own identity. And our desired result, how do teenagers develop their identity? So who do they figure out who they are or what they want to be? That's what we're talking about today. So there's some influence on identity. Teenagers go through many different challenges that can also impact their personality. I'm sure some of you are aware of this as well, as some of you are probably going through this in your own lives. And identity development is an area that psychologists focus on for teenagers. It's a big challenge spot, it's a big area that they focus on. Now, Erik Erikson stated that the establishment of identity is key to adolescent development. His views also caused a large amount of debate. So, children identity. We just kind of finished wrapping up lifespan development with children. So, building an identity is a unique task to teenagers, according to Erikson. Those who are children, when we are children, are aware of what parents and their friends or their peers, their classmates think of them. So, children begin to learn labels that can be applied to them, such as good, bad, etc. They also know their biological drives and their physical and cognitive growth. So they begin to become aware of their physical capabilities, their mental capabilities, and all those things. Now, children, and you may have done this yourself, I know I did as well, when we're children, we begin to act out or play certain roles that they dream of being. Maybe you want to be a fireman, or a superhero, or a doctor, or a lawyer, or a nurse, whatever the case may be, or a mom. I know my sister was a little girl, she used to play with her baby dolls and things like that, so she played out the role of being a mom, or things like that. However, children do not plan for the future, right? So as kids, we say, oh, I want to be a fireman when we grow up, or I want to be a doctor. But as kids, we don't fully understand, what we need to do to become a doctor or to become a fireman. So as you become a teenager, you begin to realize those things about what you need to do to actually become that job or that occupation. So Erikson in identity development. Teenagers go through what Erikson calls an identity crisis. Now this is a time of inner conflict when teenagers worry about their identities. Who am I? What do I want to do in my life? Do I want to get married? Do I not? Do I want to worry about my career? Do I want to travel the world? Who do I want to be? And there are several factors that contribute to this, including the physiological changes, which we've already talked about, and the cognitive development about thinking and changes in thinking, which we've talked about as well. New sexual drives and the possibility of intimacy, like I just said about being married or having a boyfriend or a girlfriend, can also impact this as well. So, confronting an identity. During the adolescent years, teenagers know they must confront the infinite and sometimes conflicting possibilities lie ahead of them. So, again, you probably are going through this yourself, some of you probably, so you have to face certain challenges and tasks. They begin to review their past as children, and they begin to think about their future. Okay, so you begin to develop an idea about yourself. Now, again, it can be a difficult process, and it's a time of inner conflict. Teenagers are torn between wanting to be unique, being their own individual, and also wanting to fit into society as well. Now, an integrated sense of self is achieved once you can resolve that being unique and fitting into society. Once you find that balance, you kind of become aware of yourself. Formation versus confusion. Erikson also said teenagers face identity formation versus identity confusion. It is the task of teenagers to become unique individuals with a valued place in society. Again, being unique, but also fitting into society. It's a difficult thing that, teenagers have gone through since the beginning of time. I know, I went through it as well, and I'm sure your parents and other people you may know when you're going through it yourself. It is never really completely resolved. It surfaces many times during our lifetime that, we still want to be unique, but we don't want to be, considered, an outsider or an outcast. We want to, still fit in society. Okay. Teenagers and expression. During the adolescent years, Teenagers need to organize their abilities, their talents, their interests, their background, their peer demands, their culture, and other things. That's a lot of stuff, right? And again, you're going through this. So you have to organize all these abilities and all these things going on in your mind in order to express yourselves in a socially acceptable way. Obviously, if somebody falls or slips on the ice, yeah, it might be funny for a minute, but if they're seriously injured, we don't typically continue to laugh at someone if they're seriously injured, right? We typically try to help that person, or we express sympathy for that person. So again, trying to figure those things out. An identity forms when a teenager can select the following things: a choice of an occupation. So figuring out what type of job you want to do, or what you want to do for a living with your life. You want to be a police officer, a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer. Maybe you want to own your own business. Maybe you want to be an inventor, something like that. You also have to establish a set of values and beliefs. This could be political views, could be religious views, could be a combination of both. Could be a set of family values. We talked about parenting styles, so maybe you have a different way that you would parent your children, or if you have children. So again, you have to establish a set of values and beliefs to help you establish an identity. You also have to develop a sexual identity as well. Again, do you want to have a partner, or a husband or a wife, or are you okay being alone and worrying about your career or traveling the world, whatever the case may be. Okay, so again, the major question of teenagers that kind of tie into all of these tie into this big question: who am I? Okay, and this is the major conflict for teenagers, and all those things, those three things, add into that. So the confusion of role. It's normal for teenagers to face role confusion. I don't want you guys thinking that this is like, I shouldn't be going through this. Every teenager does. Like I said, your parents, my parents, myself, we all go through this. So it's totally normal to be going through this. This is why some teenagers live what appear to be chaotic lives. You're trying to balance your friends, your schoolwork. Maybe you have a part-time job or a job. Maybe you're caring for your siblings or children or other family members. All these different things. This can also explain why some teenagers can be self-conscious, because you have so much going on in your lives and you're still trying to figure out who you are while trying to balance and juggle all these different things. Now, childish behavior to resolve a conflict and impulsive behavior also leads to confusion. Okay, so this is again acting immature. Maybe your mom or your dad or a friend says to you, "Stop being so immature." It might not necessarily be your fault. It's your brain hasn't fully developed yet, but it's a way that you're trying to resolve that conflict of not knowing how to react in that certain situation or in that certain period. James Marcy and his views. So James Marcy supported the claims by Erik Erikson in 1966. Excuse me. He stated that identity crisis occurred because individuals must make commitments on important matters, like we said, such as religion, an occupation, and political views. Marcia also used the categories of commitment and crisis to establish four very distinguished attempts to achieve success. Let me show you them here. So we have this one here, identity moratorium in adolescence. These are teenagers who are seriously considering the issues, but have not made a commitment on any one of the important matters. Okay, and again, maybe some of these categories apply to yourself right now. So these are teenagers who might be thinking about college, about potential job opportunities. Maybe do you want to live far away from school, or from home and go to school? Do you want to commute to school or be closer to school and stay in the state? But again, you haven't really committed to it. You're just kind of exploring it. We have identity foreclosure adolescents. These are teenagers who have made a firm commitment about issues not of their own doing, but from pressure by others. Your mom and dad want you to become a doctor. Your dad's a doctor, your mom's a nurse. They really want you to go into the medical field, and they're kind of pressuring you to go into the medical field as well. Okay, and you're kind of leaning that way yourself because your parents, or maybe even your friends, are pressuring you to go that way. Maybe you want to go to Penn State, but Penn State's not your top college, but all your friends are going to Penn State, or all your friends are going to a certain school, so you want to be with your friends, and they're pressuring you to make sure you join them at that school. That would be an example of identity foreclosure. Now, identity confused or diffused. Teenagers who have no sense of identity and have made no decisions about any important matters, pretty self-explanatory. You just don't really know what you want to do with your life yet, or anything like that, or maybe you're confused, maybe you're conflicted about something. And then we have identity achievement. These are teenagers who have considered many different options and have freely made decisions about important life matters. Mom and dad want you to be a doctor, go in the medical field. You say, no, I really enjoy music. I'm looking to go, be a record, go work for a record company or a CD company and publish music or be a music producer. And that's what you're deciding to do. So that's, you've considered maybe being a doctor, but you're going a different route. Okay. Marcy's categories should be interpreted strictly, and you can transition from stage to stage. You can begin at moratorium and not really know what you want to do, but you have a couple ideas, and then move to the achievement stage where you do know what you're doing. Or you could be in the achievement stage, I want to be a record producer, and then move back to moratorium. So you can transition between both. You're not always stuck in that stage. And you can also belong to multiple stages as well, such as maybe you've made a decision about an occupation, but your political views, you don't really know. You're not really into politics. You don't really know what way to go. Okay, so you can be in different levels in religion or jobs or whatever the case may be. James Marcy's main contribution to identity crisis is recognizing the sources of it. So not all psychologists agree that all teenagers go through an identity crisis. The idea of a crisis typically refers to a chaotic time or a break with something. Psychologists have stated some teenagers go through a pretty smooth adolescence transition. You might not have a lot of chaos or crazy times in your life as a teenager, or maybe right now you don't, you might later on. Um, Erickson is also going to focus his studies on disturbed teenagers, and many psychologists do report that most teenagers don't show signs of crisis. That's not to say it can't happen, but most teenagers don't show signs of crisis. There are social scientists and psychologists who look for alternatives to Erickson's theory of adolescence identity formation. Crisis is not the only state of affairs for adolescence, was stated by A.C. Peterson. Offer and Offer stated that crisis occurs when a crisis occurs, it's more important than biological factors. For an example for that, divorce or a new set of friends may cause teenager rebellion and crisis, but not strictly an internal biological clock. Okay, so it's not always the physiological things. It could be something outside, external, rather than internal. Bandura believed human development is a continuous process, and individuals develop by interacting with each other throughout life development. Now, his approach is referred to as social learning, and it focuses on interaction. Margaret Mead stressed social environment. She worked in Samoa and discovered that human development is also a continual process, and adolescents who lived in that part of the world do not act differently as children or adults. As children, they are given huge responsibilities, and so she knew there was no sudden change. So therefore, identity crisis, such as here in America or England, for whatever the case may be, identity crisis is not a universal concept. It can be different in different parts of the world. There's Margaret Mead there. The development of personality in teenagers is also complex. Personality not only involves a development of oneself, but interacting and skills with others. And this was another important contribution by Erickson. But Erickson also ignored the influence of society. So the studies of Bandura and Mead help correct some of these theories, and adolescence identity development depends on all types of these views. Okay, so I know that's a lot, but think about some of the different ways identity can form in teenagers, what some of the crisis things teenagers can face, and how did you develop, or how do teenagers develop, an understanding of themselves. Have a great rest of your day or night. Try your best on the questions, and do your best to answer this question in your weekly summary, and talk to you soon.